Stop. Stop scrolling. Stop whatever you were about to do in the next 10 seconds. Because while the rest of the royal commentary world has spent the past several weeks dissecting empty squares, Montecito kitchens, and Daily Mail civil wars over the post-royal household, the actual succession of the British crown has, in the same period, taken a quiet but genuinely consequential step forward. The Prince and Princess of Wales have begun, in careful and controlled fashion, the long preparation of their two eldest children for the working royal life that lies ahead. And the most palace-trusted royal author in modern British journalism has now openly named the title the wider royal commentary world has been waiting for. Princess Charlotte, in the long view, is being prepared to one day become Princess Royal. Picture the wider landscape. The working royal family is, by every available reading of the present moment, smaller than it has been at any point in modern memory. The king is in the late stage of his cancer treatment journey. The Queen is supporting at the most demanding tempo of her own consort career. The Princess of Wales has returned to public life after her own cancer treatment year. The Princess Royal continues to lead the engagement count by some margin, with hundreds of engagements per year well into her 70s. The Duchess of Edinburgh is shouldering an increasingly visible international role. The Prince of Wales is now, by every available signal, the operational future of the institution. And underneath that working line is the next generation, with Prince George at 12, Princess Charlotte at 11, and Prince Louis at 7, watching, learning, and beginning to step, very gently, into the early shape of the lives that have been planned for them since birth. Let us start with the title, because the title is the piece of the story that has now landed in the published press for the first time. Hello Magazine has carried reporting drawn from the work of Robert Hardman, who is, in the wider British royal commentary world, the single most palace-trusted royal author in modern British journalism. He is the author of Charles III, New King, New Court, The Inside Story, which is widely treated as the closest authorized reading of the present reign available in published form. The reason his name appears on this story is, by every honest reading of how royal commentary actually operates, the entire point of the story. Robert Hardman does not, as a rule, publish material that the palace has not approved for public circulation. So when Robert Hardman writes that Princess Charlotte may, in the long view, be elevated to the title of Princess Royal, the wider commentary world reads that as an indication of where the wider thinking inside the palace itself is now sitting. The historical context on the title is worth pausing on because the precision matters. The Princess Royal is a courtesy title bestowed by the British sovereign on the eldest surviving daughter of the monarch. It has been used since the 17th century. The title is not hereditary. It is not automatically transferred to a daughter's own children. When the holder of the title passes away, the title returns to the crown and may then, at the sovereign's discretion, be bestowed on the next eligible daughter in the senior royal line. There have, across the 4 centuries since the title was first conferred, been 7 holders of the title. It is worth walking through the full lineage briefly, because the lineage tells you something about how the institution itself thinks about the title. The first Princess Royal, Mary, was the daughter of King Charles I. The title was bestowed on her in 1642, modeled on the French royal practice of the time. The title was then bestowed on subsequent eldest daughters across the next 4 centuries, including Anne, the daughter of King George II, Charlotte, the daughter of King George III, Victoria, the daughter of Queen Victoria, Louise, the daughter of King Edward VII, Mary, the daughter of King George V, and then, after Mary's death in 1965, the present holder, Princess Anne, who was elevated in 1987. Each holder, in her own way, has used the title as the platform for a sustained working contribution to the institution. The 7th and present holder, Princess Anne, received the title in 1987 when she was already in her late 30s. The previous holder, Princess Mary, the only daughter of King George V and Queen Mary, had died in 1965. The title had then sat vacant for 22 years before being bestowed on Princess Anne. The precedent is, in plain operational terms, that the title is not, in the modern era, given to very young women. It tends to be conferred on senior royal women whose own working contribution to the institution has already been clearly established. The reason for that long pause matters. The late Queen Elizabeth chose, in the years immediately after Princess Mary's death, not to elevate her own daughter to the title at a young age. Princess Anne in 1965 was a teenager, just beginning to find her own working profile. The late Queen, by every available reading of her own approach to honors, preferred to allow her daughter's working contribution to accumulate organically before bestowing the historic title. By the time the title was finally conferred, Princess Anne had already, by every available record of her own engagement count, established herself as one of the most respected working royals of her generation. The title in that sense was a recognition of work already done, rather than a promotion to work yet to come. That historical pattern matters when you read the reporting that has now landed in Hello magazine. The framing being attributed to Robert Hardman's commentary is that there is, in his view, no better model for Princess Charlotte than her great-aunt, the Princess Royal. The implication is that Charlotte, in the long view, may be prepared to follow into the same kind of working royal life that has, by every available reading of the present moment, made Princess Anne one of the most respected figures in the modern institution. That preparation, by every available indication of how these things actually work, would unfold across years and decades. The title itself, by the 17th century precedent, would not be bestowed until Charlotte herself was a working senior royal in her own right, with her own established record of public service. That historical pattern matters when you read the reporting that has now landed in Hello magazine. The framing being attributed to Robert Hardman's commentary is that there is, in his view, no better model for Princess Charlotte than her great-aunt, the Princess Royal. The implication is that Charlotte, in the long view, may be prepared to follow into the same kind of working royal life that has, by every available reading of the present moment, made Princess Anne one of the most respected figures in the modern institution. That preparation, by every available indication of how these things actually work, would unfold across years and decades. The title itself, by the 17th century precedent, would not be bestowed until Charlotte herself was a working senior royal in her own right, with her own established record of public service. There is also a second title under quiet consideration in the wider reporting, and it is worth recording for completeness. The Duchess of Edinburgh, the present holder of which is Sophie, the wife of the king's youngest brother, Prince Edward, is a title that may, in the long view, also pass eventually to a working royal of the next generation. Prince Edward's own children, James and Louise, are not, by the present working pattern of the family, being raised toward full working royal status. The Duchy of Edinburgh title may therefore, in the long view, return to the crown and be available for redistribution to a working royal of the next generation. Princess Charlotte, by Robert Hardman's published commentary, is one of the figures who could conceivably be granted that title at some point in the longer future. The wider point worth making about both of these reporting threads is that they are, in operational terms, signals. The royal commentary world reads stories of this kind not as immediate news, but as quiet indications of the long shape of the next reign. The fact that a palace-trusted royal author has now publicly named the Princess Royal title in connection with Charlotte is not, in any honest reading, a prediction. It is an indication that the wider thinking inside the palace itself has begun to settle around the idea that Charlotte is being prepared, in the very long view, for exactly the kind of working royal life her great-aunt has spent the past 5 decades building. Now to the wider mentorship question, because the public framing of any future Charlotte succession only makes sense if you understand the quiet work that is, by every available indication, already happening behind the scenes. The Princess Royal is, by every available reading of the past several decades of British public life, the single hardest working member of the modern royal family. Her engagement count in any given year regularly exceeds the totals of every other working royal, often by a significant margin. In 2023, by published figures, She carried out more than 400 royal engagements, a higher figure than the king himself in the same period. She has, across decades, built one of the most respected portfolios of patronages in the entire institution. She is closely associated with charitable work involving veterans, equestrianism, education, and youth services. She has, by every available reading of her own quiet management of her own public profile, deliberately avoided the kind of celebrity treatment that has, in the modern era, attached itself to other working royals. She is, in plain operational terms, the model of what a working senior royal can be when the work is genuinely the center of the life. The wider reporting on the relationship between the Princess Royal and her great-niece is consistent across multiple credible commentary sources. The two are understood to share a close bond. They are believed to share a love of ballet and sport. They are described by every available reading of how the wider Wales family has integrated with the Anne household as natural mentor and mentee. The mentorship, by every available indication, is unfolding in exactly the way the Princess Royal handles every other aspect of her own working life. Stoically, quietly, without fuss. Without drawing any unnecessary attention to the work itself. The wider point is not the photographs. The wider point is the quiet operational instruction. Princess Charlotte is, by the present indications, third in line to the throne, behind her father and her elder brother. That position means that, in the long view, she may end up occupying the role her great-aunt has spent 50 years building. The role of the senior royal woman who carries the operational load that the principal heir cannot personally cover. The Princess Royal's record, in that role, is the gold standard. The fact that she is, by every available indication, now quietly involved in Princess Charlotte's early preparation is, in the long view, the most important institutional development in the next generation of the royal family. The wider commentary point is that the Princess Royal has, in the modern era, increasingly become one of the most popular working members of the institution among the British public. Polling on the working royals consistently places her in the very upper tier. The reason for that popularity is not, by every available reading, flash. It is not the gowns, it is not the bright lights. It is the patient, unshowy, decade after decade dedication to the actual work the institution exists to do. That is the lesson the wider royal commentary world believes Princess Charlotte is now being quietly given. Not the gowns, not the bright lights, the work itself. There's also a piece of biographical context on the Princess Royal that is worth recording because it illuminates the kind of mentor she is. She is the daughter who, in 1974, when an attempt was made to kidnap her from her car on the Mall in central London, reportedly responded to the kidnapper's demand to get out of the vehicle with the famously direct phrase, "not bloody likely." The phrase entered the wider British public vocabulary almost overnight, and the moment itself became part of the foundational mythology of the modern royal family. She is the working royal who, when asked by a senior international journalist what her favorite hobby was, reportedly replied that anything that did not fart or eat hay did not, on the whole, hold her interest. She is the equestrian who competed for the British team at the Montreal Olympics in 1976, the first member of the British royal family to compete at the Olympic Games. She is the mother who, when she had the option to grant her own children royal titles, declined to do so, on the working principle that her son Peter and her daughter Zara should be allowed to develop their own lives as far as possible outside the institutional pressure of titled royal status. Every one of those biographical details, in its own way, is the kind of detail that explains why she is now, by every available reading of the present moment, the figure the wider Wales family is quietly trusting with the early preparation of their eldest daughter. The Princess Royal's siblings have, by every available reading of the late Queen Elizabeth's own family, always remained closely connected to one another. The king and his sister in particular are widely understood to have a relationship built on more than half a century of shared experience inside the institution. The king is reported to consult her on family matters that matter most to him. She is one of the very small number of figures in the wider royal household whose published commentary the king is willing to listen to without filter. That trust is now, by every available indication, being quietly extended into the next generation, Princess Charlotte in the long view will not be left to learn the working royal life on her own. She has the patient, decade-long attention of the single most respected senior working royal of the present generation, and the careful institutional cooperation of her parents in arranging the conditions for that mentorship to unfold. Now to the more immediate story landing in the same news cycle, because the immediate story has, in the past several days, become one of the most carefully watched royal travel speculations of the year. The American broadcaster Fox News has carried reporting attributed to Christopher Anderson, the author and Middleton family friend, suggesting that Prince William may bring Prince George to the United States this summer for the FIFA World Cup. The piece notes that, were such a trip to take place, it would mark the first time two future kings of the United Kingdom had traveled to the United States together. The framing being used in the reporting is that George, who is by every available account a passionate football supporter, would join his father for what would in essence be a working father and son trip to a major sporting event, with the additional possibility of some soft diplomatic engagements around the trip itself. The Kensington Palace response to this reporting has been one of the most carefully phrased non-denials the wider press has heard in months. The published response was that there are, at this time, no public plans yet. Read that response again. Not no plans, no public plans yet. That is, in the careful diplomatic language of British royal press operations, the kind of response that explicitly preserves the option of the trip going ahead while declining to confirm anything in advance. The wider context for any potential visit is genuinely interesting. The United States is, this year, marking the 250th anniversary of its independence, an anniversary of significant ceremonial weight on the American calendar. The king has already completed a successful state visit during the same year, which, by every available reading, went considerably better than the British establishment had originally feared. A second Wales family visit, layered on top of the king's earlier engagement, would be a substantial commitment of working royal attention to the United States in a single calendar year. The wider geopolitical environment, with the ongoing situation in Iran complicating diplomatic calendars across the wider international community, may also be a factor in any palace deliberation about whether the trip should go ahead and in what form. There is also a piece of context worth recording on the wider FIFA World Cup itself, because it explains why the trip is interesting beyond pure royal commentary. The European royal families have, in the modern era, generally treated their crown princes and princesses as figures who should be exposed, in carefully chosen settings, to the wider international community from a relatively young age. The Dutch royal family, by recently published reporting, has already confirmed that the family will be traveling to the United States during the World Cup. The wider continental tradition is that the next generation is brought along to major international sporting and ceremonial occasions as a part of their early introduction to the working royal life, in conditions that allow them to begin learning the operational rhythms of international royal travel without yet being placed under the full weight of official engagements. It is also worth noting that the FIFA World Cup itself, taking place across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, is one of the largest sporting events of the modern global calendar. The matches will be staged across multiple major American cities, and the broadcast audience will be measured in the billions across the tournament. For any working royal traveling to the event, the operational appeal is considerable. The trip can be staged as primarily a sporting occasion, with the diplomatic engagement layered carefully around it, and the wider public reception is one of the most enthusiastic any visiting figure can receive on American soil. For the Prince of Wales, the chance to introduce his eldest son to that scale of international occasion in a setting that is genuinely interesting to a 12-year-old football enthusiast is the kind of opportunity that does not arise often. The Prince of Wales, by every available reading of his own published commentary, has generally been visibly cautious about exposing his own children to the wider press apparatus that came with his own childhood. The Wales family approach has, for years, been characterized by careful, controlled introductions to public life, rather than by full immersion. A FIFA World Cup trip with his eldest son, framed primarily as a father and son sporting occasion with the option of some soft diplomatic engagements layered around it, would fit comfortably inside that careful approach. The wider royal commentary world will be watching the calendar carefully across the next several weeks for any further indication of whether the visit will, in the end, take place. Now to the wider question that sits underneath both stories, because both stories ask the same underlying question in different ways. When should the next generation of the British royal family begin to step into public life? The traditional British answer is later rather than earlier. Princess Anne herself, by the historical record, did not begin her own first solo royal engagements until 1969, at the age of 18. The Prince of Wales, now King, began his own working public profile gradually across his teenage years and into his early 20s. The present Prince of Wales followed a broadly similar pattern, with carefully chosen public appearances across his teenage years giving way to a more sustained working profile as he moved into his 20s. The pattern is generally one of patience. The principle is that childhood and adolescence should be allowed to unfold, as far as possible, in something approximating normal conditions, before the institutional weight of working royal life is allowed to descend. The continental royal families have, in the past several decades, generally moved in a somewhat different direction. The Scandinavian royal houses in particular have tended to introduce the next generation to public engagements somewhat earlier, in carefully chosen settings, on the working assumption that early exposure helps the young royal develop the public skills and the institutional familiarity that the role will eventually require. Princess Estelle of Sweden, who is approximately a year older than Prince George, has already begun to appear at official functions in support of her grandfather, King Carl Gustaf, and her mother, the Crown Princess. She has been present at major birthday occasions, at state luncheons, at moments where she has been required to engage with visiting figures from outside the family. She is, by every available reading of the Swedish royal family's careful approach to her preparation, learning the operational rhythms of working royal life from a relatively early age. There is a genuine institutional argument either way. The traditional British approach has, across generations, produced senior royals whose personal characters have generally been allowed to develop in something close to ordinary conditions, which is in itself a significant institutional achievement given the pressures of the role. The continental approach has produced young royals who arrive at their working majority with several years of practical experience already in hand, which is also a significant institutional achievement. The wider question for the present Wales family is, which of those two models suits the present moment best? The argument the wider royal commentary world has now begun to make in print is that the present moment may, by every available reading, favor a somewhat earlier introduction than would have been the historic British norm. The working royal family is, in operational terms, smaller than it has been in modern memory. The king is in active cancer treatment. The Princess of Wales has returned from her own cancer treatment year. The wider front line of working royals has been thinned by the departures of the past several years. The institution itself is, by every available reading of the present moment, doing more work with fewer principal figures than at any point in living memory. Into that working environment, the gradual introduction of the next generation may begin to look, by every available reading of the institutional arithmetic, less like an indulgence and more like an operational necessity. It is also worth pausing on what an early introduction actually means in practical terms, because the language can be misleading. Nobody is suggesting that an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old should be carrying solo royal engagements. Nobody is suggesting that the next generation should be placed under the kind of working calendar pressure that, in the historic British pattern, would be inappropriate at this stage of their development. What the continental tradition actually involves is a gradual familiarization, standing beside parents at major ceremonial occasions with the understanding that the child is not the focus of the engagement but is being allowed to absorb the rhythm of how these events actually work. Brief appearances at family birthdays, at significant national celebrations, at occasions where the rest of the family is gathered, and the child can experience the wider working royal pattern alongside the people who already know how to manage it. That is, in operational terms, The kind of early introduction the wider commentary is now beginning to suggest may be appropriate for the British family as well. The Prince and Princess of Wales will, by every available reading of how they have publicly framed their own parenting, make their own decisions about the timing in their own time. They have been, by every available signal, deeply protective of their children's personal development. They have been deeply opposed to the kind of premature press exposure that in earlier generations was seen as a normal part of royal childhood. They will not, by any honest reading of their published approach, be moved by external pressure. But the institutional question is real, and the wider royal commentary world is, by every available signal, beginning to ask it more openly than at any previous point. There is also a wider personal observation worth making, because the Prince of Wales himself has been notably open in his published commentary about the lessons he drew from his own childhood. He has, in various interviews across the past decade, made clear that he wishes his own children to be allowed to develop in conditions that are, as far as the realities of their position will allow, more ordinary than his own childhood was. That commitment is, by every available reading, a serious one. It is not a piece of public relations positioning. It is a personal principle the Prince of Wales has built into the operating model of his own family. Any decision the Wales family makes about the timing of the next generation's public introduction will be made inside that personal principle. The wider commentary world should expect, by every honest reading of the published pattern, that any introduction will be careful, gradual, and weighted in favor of the children's own development rather than in favor of the institutional convenience of the wider family. Step back from the individual stories now and consider the wider institutional picture, because the picture is the reason these stories are landing the way they are landing. The British royal family is, by every available reading of the present moment, navigating one of the most demanding periods of its modern history. The reign is 2.5 years in. The king has, by his own openly disclosed circumstances, been managing cancer treatment across the better part of the past 18 months. The Queen has carried the heaviest consort calendar in modern memory across that period. The Princess of Wales has returned from her own treatment year and is now, by every available indication, easing back into a sustained working profile, with her recent Italy tour drawing the kind of organic public response royal historians struggle to find historical parallels for. The Prince of Wales has now committed to the largest single Duchy of Cornwall reform in modern history, with a £500 million 10-year program directed toward affordable housing and environmental restoration. The Princess Royal continues to carry the highest engagement count in the working family at an age when most of her contemporaries are long retired. The Duchess of Edinburgh has stepped into an increasingly visible international role in support of the wider working calendar. That is the working line, 6 principal figures carrying the operational load of an institution that was, in earlier generations, supported by a considerably larger working roster. The departures of the past several years, 2 from the senior working royal corps and 1 through formal removal from public roles, have left the working line significantly smaller than it had been throughout the late Queen's own reign. Into that working environment, the question of when and how the next generation begins to step in becomes considerably more than a question of personal preference. It becomes a question of institutional sustainability. The institution itself, by every available reading of the present arithmetic, needs the next generation to be ready, in some form, sooner rather than later. The Prince and Princess of Wales themselves, by every available reading of their own thinking, want their children's personal development to be allowed to unfold as far as possible in ordinary conditions. The tension between those two pressures is, by every available reading, the real institutional story sitting underneath the public reporting on the Princess Royal title and the FIFA World Cup possibility. The wider royal commentary world is beginning, gently, to talk about that tension out loud. There is a wider piece of structural context worth recording, because it explains why the conversation has reached this point now, rather than 5 years ago. The original working royal architecture, as it stood in the period immediately before the original royal departure in 2020, was built on the assumption that the next generation of working royals would consist of the Wales family and the Sussex family, working in parallel across the decades to come. 2 young couples, 4 young children initially, with the working royal calendar shared between them. That assumption no longer holds. The Sussex departure removed half of the planned next-generation working architecture in a single move. The institution has been adjusting to the consequences of that adjustment ever since. In the years immediately following the original departure, the working royal family was able to absorb the gap, with the senior generation carrying the additional load. The late Queen Elizabeth continued into her final year to maintain a visible institutional presence. The king, on his ascension, picked up the working calendar with a level of personal energy that surprised many observers. The Princess of Wales, before her own cancer treatment year, carried an extraordinary share of the modern working profile. The senior generation, in essence, picked up the slack the next generation could not. The challenge now is that the senior generation cannot continue indefinitely to carry that load. The king is in his late 70s, the queen is in her late 70s. The Princess Royal, however remarkable her own working contribution, cannot personally cover 3 working royals' worth of engagements forever. The Prince of Wales, despite the largest single Duchy of Cornwall reform in modern history, cannot personally be in every place the institution needs the working family to be. The institutional arithmetic, in plain operational terms, is now reaching the point at which the next generation will eventually need to begin contributing in some form. The Princess Royal succession reporting in Hello magazine, the FIFA World Cup possibility with George, and the wider quiet preparation work that is by every available indication already underway are all manifestations of an institution beginning to think out loud about how the next decade will be staffed. None of this is being said in the manner of a crisis. The British royal family, by every available reading of its own history, has navigated demographic transitions of this kind many times across the centuries. The institution is not, by any honest reading, in trouble. The working royal family is, by every available reading of the present moment, doing the work it was built to do, at the scale it is currently able to do it. The question is simply when and at what pace the next generation begins to share the load. And the present week's reporting is, in plain terms, the wider commentary world beginning to ask that question more openly than it has been asked before. So, this is the picture as we leave it. A palace-trusted royal author has now openly named the title that Princess Charlotte may, in the long view, eventually hold. The Princess Royal, the most respected and hardest-working senior royal of her generation, is by every available indication quietly involved in her great-niece's early preparation. The Prince of Wales is, by every available reading of recent reporting, weighing a FIFA World Cup trip to the United States with his eldest son. The Kensington Palace response to that reporting has carefully preserved the option of the trip going ahead. The wider working royal family is operating in a smaller working line than at any point in modern memory. And the institutional question of when the next generation should begin to step into public life is, by every available signal of the past several weeks of published commentary, being asked more openly than at any previous point. These are not, by any honest reading, the stories the wider royal commentary world tends to lead with. The stories the wider press tends to lead with are louder, faster, and more immediately commercial. But the stories that, in the long view, will matter most to the next several decades of the British monarchy are the ones being quietly told this week. The patient preparation of a girl who may one day be Princess Royal, the careful staging of a boy who may one day be king, the wider working family quietly continuing the patient, unshowy work that the institution exists to do, at the scale the institution has been built to do it, and the gentle beginning of the next generation's introduction to the working royal life that has been planned for them since birth. Stay sharp, stay watching, because the story that begins with the next generation is, by every honest reading, the story that will define the British monarchy across the next half-century. The Princess Royal succession, in the long view. The FIFA World Cup, in the immediate one. And the wider institutional question of how a working royal family carries its load, generation after generation, across the centuries, I will see you very soon.